In honor of all things creepy, I'm going to be doing my mama's nails with these Spirit Halloween glow in the dark press ons, not sponsored. While I do her nails, she's going to do the voiceover telling us about something scary that happened to her one dark and stormy Halloween night while she was in college. Nah, it wasn't stormy, but it was Halloween. Without further ado, take it over, mama.
In 1970, I was 7 years old. I lived in a relatively safe community where people didn't even bother to close their doors, much less lock them. There just wasn't any fear of anyone entering with ill intentions. Since crime was unheard of in our parts, no one worried about us children playing outside at night. We celebrated occasions as a community, and my favorite was Halloween. I liked trick or treating just as much as the next kid. When I was about 10 years old, there were reports on the news of people putting razor blades in apples and poisoning candy.
Hold on. You mean that really happened? I've been hearing that rumor going around a long time. I mean, since I was a kid, but I've never actually seen an instance of it. It was real.
Yeah. But let me get back to my story. My mom didn't allow us to go trick or treating anymore. She also stopped opening the door to pass out candy. Instead, she bought candy at the store and made bags of treats. We would get in the car and take them out to the houses of kids who usually came to the door. After I got into high school, we just didn't celebrate Halloween anymore. Though our neighborhood was still pretty much crime free, my family made it a point to do everything we need to do during the day on Halloween. After dark, we did not go outside. Not playing outside at night became normal for us. Fast forward 10 years later, to 1982. I was a freshman in college. And this college was so super huge that it made up for most of the town. With millions of people roaming about all day and night, it was hard to feel unsafe. After a few months of routine campus living, precaution had completely gone with the wind. I had picked up the habit of going and coming whenever I felt like it, even walking alone at night. And that worked well for me because even though I wasn't really shy, I was a bit of a loner. I preferred being by myself rather than hanging out with crowds. One day, I woke up to a bunch of hustle and bustle out in the dorm hallway. I looked out my peephole from left to right to see students running back and forth wearing various costumes. And then I remembered it was Halloween. They didn't mean anything to me. I wouldn't be joining the festivities. I just went about getting ready for class just like any other ordinary day. My class load was light that day. I had two classes and one lab. My day began at 8 a.m. and by noon I was headed back to the dorm. Now, fast forward a few hours. People in the dorm were packed in the common area, having what they described as a pre party mixer. And was a common area on there was a common area on each of the three floors of the dorm with a lot of couches, a few coffee tables, a big screen TV, and a kitchen. Each common area was packed full of people wearing all kinds of costumes, some obvious, others very obscure. The shrieking and laughter got so loud that I couldn't hear myself think. I was working on a psychology paper that wasn't due for a few weeks, but I wanted to get ahead on the syllabus. I decided it would be better for me to go to the library and find a quiet spot. I moved past the huddle of people on the first floor and began walking towards the library. To get to the library, I had to pass the student union, a dining hall, and a couple of class buildings. I stopped momentarily to get a whiff of the greasy burgers and fries at the dining hall, but I was reluctant to go in because the tables weren't big enough for me to spread all my books out and still be able to work on my paper. Suddenly, I felt hungry and knew just the spot that had tables big enough to let me spread my books and eat at the same time. Burger King. My watch read 4:20. I looked around up at the sky to see the sun slightly going down, but there was still plenty of daylight left. Not as much as before because the daylight saving time was nearly over. I noticed a man wearing a Michael Myers mask standing just outside the student union, a little adjacent to where I was standing. He was just standing there staring at me. I figured that he was probably on his way to a Halloween party. I shrugged my shoulders and continued walking. A girl in one of my classes waved to me. I stopped
Hey
briefly.
girl, where
She
you
was on her
headed?
way to a Halloween party and asked me if I wanted to join her. I lied. I told her I had an exam the next day and needed to get some more study material from the library. She made a little pout face before
Okay,
moving
girl, work on
past
your
me,
test. Good luck
headed back
studying.
in the direction from where I had come. I looked up at the sky. Nighttime wasn't too far off. I reasoned that there might be a chance I could make it back to my dorm before dark. I made the decision to walk further across campus in search of my favorite fast food joint, Burger King. It was about 15 minutes from the library. As I approached the library, I noticed that same man with the Michael Myers mask standing outside the door in the walkway. He was standing there just staring at me. I smiled dryly and gave him a nervous wave. The man just continued watching me. He startled me a little, but I reminded myself this was Halloween, and lots of people would be trying to scare anyone and everyone they could. I continued on my way to Burger King. After about 5 minutes, I looked behind me and saw the man again. And when he realized I had stopped, he tried to semi hide behind a nearby tree, while at the same time making sure he remained visible and that I knew he was looking directly at me. I picked up my pace and kept moving. I crossed a busy street directly across from Burger King. I quickly opened the door and entered. I stood just at the door and saw the masked man standing across the street, still staring at me. I told myself this bizarre experience has got to be over. I made it safely inside. I went up to the counter and placed my usual order: plain cheeseburger, small fry, medium cup of water.
Plain
As I
cheeseburger,
waited
small
to
fry,
receive
and
my food, I
extra.
tried to slyly dart my eyes around the room from the door to the windows. There was only one entry and exit door. The masked man was nowhere in sight. I got my food and took my tray to a corner booth that allowed a clear view of all of the windows and the door. And that way I could see if the man came back. At first, I sat there motionless, darting my eyes from the windows to the entrance exit door. It was almost dark now. When I didn't see the man during those motionless moments, I became satisfied that he was probably at a Halloween party somewhere trying to scare other people like he had scared me. By the time I started eating, it was completely dark outside. My food had gotten cold, but I ate it anyway. I soon turned my attention to my notes for the paper, and before I knew it, I became so engrossed in my work that I completely forgot about the scary event I had just experienced. It wasn't until an employee approached my booth and asked me if I was done with my tray that I noticed the employees cleaning the store, preparing to close. By now, the tray only held an empty fry box, empty burger wrapper, and an empty cup. I nodded yes. She took the tray and dumped the contents in the trash can. I picked up on the cue, loaded my backpack with schoolwork. I went to the front of the restaurant, waited for the employee to unlock the door so I could leave. And for a split second, I thought I saw the masked man. But when I blinked and looked again, there was no one there. The employee unlocked the door and I stepped out into the night. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath to smell the night air. I opened my eyes and looked all around me, not a soul in sight. I took another deep breath and started making my way back across campus. Every few steps I stopped and looked around. I didn't see anyone, not even the usual movement of people going about. I made it to the library. So far, so good. Still no one in sight. I paused there for just a few seconds to adjust my backpack. Suddenly, I spotted a figure from my peripheral vision. My heart skipped a beat. There he was, the familiar masked man, walking in my direction.
Run.
I took off running. In high school, I was a track star. So when I say I took off, I was going for the gold. I passed the bookstore. All the lights were out. I didn't bother to run there. I stopped at the dining hall and tugged on the door. It was locked. A few feet away, the student union had plenty of lights, but a big sign posted read, "Go to the front door on the other side to enter." I looked back to see the man walking towards me, taking long strides. I took off running again. All the while, not a single person crossed my path. I made it to my dorm, and I looked back. The masked man was still headed in my direction. I grabbed my keys from my pocket and began fumbling with the keyhole. The key wouldn't fit the lock. I was terrified. My heart was beating faster than a machine gun shoots bullets. Worse, the masked man was about 20 feet away from me. He was running. I yelled out into the air, half crying, "TV! I'm never gonna call TV women stupid again when they can't get their keys to work." Suddenly, the key went into the lock and I was able to open the door. I pulled the key out of the lock and cracked the door open just enough for me to quickly squeeze in. I hurriedly pulled the slow moving self locking door shut. The lock clicked just as the masked man reached the door. He banged on the clear side light window on the door. Then I quickly ran up the 3 flights of stairs to my room. I cracked my room door just enough to let myself in, but not enough for the hallway lights to flood my room. I locked the door behind me and fumbled my way across the room in the dark. I went to the window and peeped through the blinds. He was standing near a bush by the door, smoking a cigarette. He lifted his head to blow out the smoke. I ducked my head back, hoping he didn't see me. I didn't hear anything, so I peeped out again, just in time to see the masked man walking out of view. I collapsed on my bed and laid there waiting for my breathing to return to normal. I didn't dare turn my room light on, even though he had already gone, and he really had no way of knowing which room was mine. I curled up in the center of the bed and did not move until the sun came up the next morning. I never told anyone about this experience, and I always make sure I'm home before it gets dark, especially on Halloween.